Welcome to Russia Today. I'm Tamara Stuchlak, and in this segment, we have a fascinating guest who is an author, filmmaker, and philosopher. Her name is Galima Galiullina. So welcome.
Good evening.
And let's just jump right into, you have a fascinating book called Leadership in the 21st Century, An Outlook from Russia.
Yeah, I'm very proud with this book.
And it was written back in the early 2000s.
2002, yeah.
And there's predictions in here that have come true. Tell us about that.
Exactly. I'm so happy that every day I see that things which I wrote about in this book now coming true.
And you're a social philosopher.
Yes. And you know why I wrote this book at that time?
Why?
It was time when Russia was dying. And it was
2002.
Yeah, because it was the end of all these democratic reforms, and economy was just ruined, and Chechen war was continuous, and people were tired because their hopes were broken, they were poor, and a lot of criminal. Straight on the street, it was possible to see that people killing each other. So it was time when West was writing that Russia is dying. We are already near the bed of dying Russia. And I decided to realize for myself, to find the answer. Is really Russia dying, so I'm living in dying country? Or Russia is emerging because it's the bottom? And my students, I had at that time, very bright students.
You were a professor.
Yeah, I've been a professor in Chelyabinsk State University, and it was law faculty, and students were amazingly just bright. And they said, let us, to help you with research, we will make a poll about what Russians think about Russia, about the world, and about global leadership.
And were some of those predictions put in this book?
Yeah, yes. And when we made this poll, and we found that Russia has such a great future, very soon is coming, because people changed. People changed during this 12 years, during democratic reforms. Freedom and globalization changed them.
In what ways?
First of all, they realized that they have their own culture, that they have their own dignity, and they can go further with their own mentality. All these previous efforts to change Russian mentality to Western mentality, they were hopeless. And Russians realized this at that time. That
was empowering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what was surprising in some of the predictions that you put in this book and that now you're seeing come about?
First of all, that Russia will come back to global chess play as an equal player, not as just a vassal. And that Putin could become national leader if he will be able to understand what Russian people are waiting from him. And now it's coming true.
And what are they desiring from him?
From him to protect national interests of Russia. Because in the 90s, all national interests were just forgotten. Nobody was able to say, what is this national interest of Russia? Nobody. Our foreign minister, Andrei Kozyrev, he met with American president, and he asked him, what now Russian national interest? And he said, oh, it's so boring item now. We don't care about that. If you will tell me what do you think about what is our national interest, I'll appreciate you. Can you imagine? Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev said this, and the president was remembering about that. So, can you imagine this level of
disconnect?
Yeah, and so when and second part of this book, it's a deep interview with leaders in different spheres of society, business people, sports people, for example, champion of Europe in boxing.
What would surprise people about some of their thoughts?
What will be surprise people about?
So what would Americans be surprised about that these interviews produced?
Because these interviews were about future of Russia, why Russia will be a great country very soon. Because first of all, they doing this. They're doing everything. They devoting their lives, their businesses, their arts for that. And they understand that very soon Russia will wake up. And the world need this. They were understanding this. And America need this because to know about the thoughts of Russian people at that time in 2002, because it was beginning of situation now. Why Russia now loudly telling about their own national interest, why they don't want to forget about opportunities to be equal partner, why they demand to be equal, why they demand equal partnership.
So your leadership book in the 21st century has 10 commandments. Let's talk about this commandment of powerful spirit.
You know, any leadership, especially leadership in the country which in the situation like Russia, needs very high level of spirit. Because when you
any country
and any country, of course, but Russia is special country because our country always has some turning points where people suffering like revolutions or big war like World War II, Great Patriotic War, and they always survive and win just because this high level of spirit, not just of ordinary people, but leaders and the whole country, whole nation.
The will of a people.
Yes, absolutely.
Are these 10 commandments, are they to represent what leadership for Russians and what has been experienced, or is it to translate for the United States and leadership here?
For United States, of course, as usual, well, because if Americans and Russians will find better ways for cooperation, for understanding each other, I'm sure that we will be able together
and that is
to
your
build
passion,
greater world.
Improving that cooperation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And so of these other 10 commandments, is there one or two that pops out that is especially important for Americans and our leadership to be more aware of?
Actually, it's important for everybody who wants to be leaders. I mean, who wants to win in global competitions, and at the same time to keep themselves as trustful partners.
So this is leadership in politics or all
everywhere,
leaders,
everywhere,
all industries?
Everywhere,
yes.
Yeah, everywhere. It doesn't matter which sphere of life, or if it's for person, or for country, or for team, or for a business company.
In your interviews in the book, did you have people tell you about their experiences or their commitment to respect for other people, for honesty, for social responsibility?
Sure, of course, because you know, when new generation, first generation of business people came to management of companies, they were in situation that they have to find trust from people, because people were just lost. They were sitting.
Why were they lost? Because there were new institutions in place?
They were not new institutions. No, any institutions. For example, I'll tell you about Челябинsk Tractor plant. 70,000 people were working at this plant.
Yes.
Which was built actually in America. I mean, project of this plant was made in America together with Russian engineers here. And they used the experience of the best American machinery companies. And they built this in 30s. And now 70,000 people sitting, waiting where contracts where we can receive some money to support the families. And once I've been interviewing one lady who working as a guide in museum of this tractor plant, and she was talking about this time. Can you imagine when family has no any salary during 6 months, half of year, you have nothing. And she began to cry, remembering these times. So it was time when people were waiting leaders who will come and tell, I know what to do. So these people who included in my book, they were this kind of leaders who were coming and telling to people that I know what to do, just trust me. And people trusted them. So it was time when people needed honest leaders. And of course, it's always, they always need this.
So we're coming to the close of this first portion of your story and your book. Tell us about your documentary and becoming a filmmaker.
Oh, it was it was gift from destiny because I love very much cinema, and I spent a lot of hours in cinema watching American movies.
Yes.
Maybe this is why I'm here now. It was like a dream to see some new American movie. And of course, I had my own dream that I'll make one day my own movie. And once I've been sitting in the night, I like to write in the nights, and suddenly I saw that British Council wants somebody to send them proposals about some small grants, idea of small grant, and I wrote half of page idea about the documentary about the economic relationship between South Urals and Great Britain. And then I got call from General Counsel of Great Britain that she wants to meet with me. She's coming to my university to meet with me and to talk about this project. So I got these opportunities and money to make my own movie. And it was about, not just about Great Britain and South Urals, it was mostly about South Ural going to the future through this global contacts, through this new teams of new companies, new global thinking, and new corporate cultures.
That was a beautiful way to sum up what we've talked about in this segment. So come back and we will hear more about global thinking.